So I have some of these Phoroptors that are more than 20 years old, and it's getting to the point where I can't get some of the axis tension correct, where I flip away the JCC and the axis swings out of place, so I tighten up the setting, and then the knob's so hard to turn I can't hardly turn the knob, and I can't find anything in between. So I got the idea when I was taking one of these apart that, you know, I think these washers have flattened out. So the first thing that goes on is a compression washer, which has a couple different names. One is a spring washer, another one is a wave washer. So anyway, I took it out and I thought, you know, it looks kind of flat. And others don't look this flat. So I bought some, I looked at some other ones and I realized that they were a lot wavier than this. So I bought a bunch of new ones. Now this is a new one, which is called a spring washer, but also a wave washer. You can see why. I mean, it looks like it's in waves. It's like there's actually 3 down sides to this and 3 up sides to it, so a total of 6 convolutions of this. And this goes on there. I'm going to put grease on it first. And then next goes this lock nut, or nut, and then the lock nut on top of it. So the slotted nut is the second thing. So I'll put some grease in here, grease up the new wave washer, put in the slotted nut, put on top of it the lock nut. The final thing that goes on is a snap ring, but what I found is this central shaft has a lot of up and down movement, and what they typically put on it is between 1 and 4 of these little spacer washers, which 0.002 mil, which are the same ones that are used to space the bank out if the cylinder assembly is too tight up against the Phoroptor body. It has to be spaced out with a few of these sometimes. Well, the same thing, to keep this central shaft from having too much play, these washers fit between the lock nut and the snap ring, and that keeps the shaft from having too much play. Now, when the shaft has too much play, what actually happens is the cylinder power wheel has too much play and moves up and down, and that can cause the cylinder wheels to bump or jam into each other, especially when it's in a horizontal position like this, where gravity has more effect on it. So by getting the right number of those spacer washers in here, it can keep this shaft play from being too much up and down, in and out, whatever, and that will keep the lens wheels of the cylinder mechanism from jamming into each other. Now, the complaint I've gotten on this Phoroptor is recently the doctors found that when the JCC is flipped out, it often causes the axis to rotate. What I typically do is I tighten up the resistance of this, which I did, but the problem still persisted. At times it just sort of catches and then causes the axis to rotate a lot. So this has a little bit too much resistance, but I've already cleared the excess grease out, I thought. So this shouldn't be the problem, but maybe there's still residual problems in there, or the bushings need to be replaced in there. The other possibility I was thinking of is maybe it's inside this turret cover, and as I looked in here, it looks like it's got an excessive amount of old dry grease, and so I think soaking it with 3-in-1 oil and blotting out all the excess oil and grease and putting a thin layer of fresh grease might help resolve the problem, make it move more smoothly and have less resistance when rotating this around. Maybe that's how it's catching, but I'm still not sure. But there is a lot of junk in there. So I cleaned out all the grease, soaked it with 3-in-1 oil, did the same on this side. And now there's really no drag as I'm flipping this in and out. So maybe all that thick dry grease was the cause of the extra resistance. And I'll put a thin layer of Sil-Glide grease in there. I've pretty well drained out the excess 3-in-1 oil. Then I'll just add the Sil-Glide to it. Okay, so I put a thin film of the Sil-Glide in there, not the big gobs that was there before. And hopefully this will be enough to keep it lubricated, but not dried out. This is a normal operation for a JCC, very distinct click stop for power and axis. I got a report of this one, and it has a very loose arrangement on the click stop. And what usually is the cause of this is inside this turret cover is a large gear, and then there's a set screw into the gear, and that's often the cause that the set screw has loosened up. So here we have the inside of the turret cover. Now this is a little bit difficult to demonstrate, but if you look carefully at the center black shaft there, as I rotate the axis, the center shaft is moving without moving the gear. And the cause is a loose set screw here, which is a peculiar looking head, but really the way to tighten it is a specific size slotted screwdriver, which can go either, as you see here, in the vertical position or the somewhat horizontal position. So this has, I think, 2 of these little screwdrivers in it, and then one other torque screwdriver, I think. So this is the tip of the slotted screwdriver. It's listed as 1.2 millimeter, and I don't recall if I modified it. I might have modified it to make it a thicker tip by filing the end of it flat somewhat. But anyway, this fits into the set screw opening. It's too tough to do with my left hand. But okay, I got it in there now, and it does feel quite loose. So now I have the set screw tightened, and when I turn the axis, that shaft moves exactly, the shaft and gear move exactly together. In a similar fashion on the click stop, it has a distinct stopping point, and there's no longer that excessive play. Now the only thing that bothers me about this, it's a little hard to visualize, but the central shaft is downset slightly from the edge of this gear. Usually they're pretty close to being flush. I had it happen on one occasion when one of these loosened, that the central piece dropped so low that I really couldn't tighten it anymore, and I had to send it in the Lombard to have it basically pulled out. I just opened up the Phoroptor, and on the inside I could not see a way that I could push it from the inside, so I really don't know how to get it back out. And I just have to see if this maintains function. But if it dropped any lower than that set screw position, then I'd have to send it in to have it reassembled so the shaft is closer to being flush with the top of this gear mechanism. But this should work as is. The tightening process is something like holding the Phoroptor body with, let's say, the left hand, holding the screwdriver with the right hand, and then pushing in real hard. I'm holding a camera with my left hand, so I can't do it properly. And I already did this. Push it in real hard, and then rotate while jiggling it, sort of, and that sort of helps snug it up with. And you have to make sure you're not turning so hard that you actually strip out the head of the screw, because then it'll have to be replaced. But it's now tightened up and it's functioning properly.